And Jeff is coming in too.
Perfect. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing great. I'm going to go ahead and get the ball rolling here. It looks like we're live right now. So welcome, everyone. Appreciate having you here on a stormy evening. I'm going to go ahead and call to order, and let's get a confirmation of quorum. Margaret, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, we have 7 members present, and if I can just quickly call a roll, then Chris Austin.
Present.
Frank Casadante is not with us yet. Chris Johnston.
Present.
Elise Polly is not with us yet. Lisa Frazier had called and let me know she would not be here, so I didn't call her name. Jeff Scott.
Present.
Cooper Schultz.
Present.
Jen Sykes.
Present.
Scott Taylor.
Here.
Toby Vandermark.
Here.
And if Elise is coming in, so we'll give her just a minute to, there we go. And Elise Polly.
Oh, sorry, there was a little leak in the bathroom, so we just needed a moment, but I'm here now.
Great. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 members present, which is a quorum. We're ready to go.
All right, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the agenda. Margaret, do we have any changes or any updates that we need to add to tonight's meeting?
I don't have any.
Perfect. Does anyone else have any additions, subtractions? I don't think you're allowed to do subtractions, but all right. I think, and I always mess this up, I think we can move on to minutes review and approval. Yep. All right, great. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns about how you were portrayed in the minutes? No. Okay.
Move approve.
Move to approve. Anyone second?
Good.
Hooper with a second. All right, so we've got a movement to approve the minutes as they are written.
Chris Austin.
Aye.
Chris Johnston.
Aye.
Elise Polly.
Aye.
Jeff Scott.
Aye.
Cooper Schultz.
Aye.
Jen Sykes.
Aye.
Scott Taylor.
Aye.
Toby Vandermark.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
All right, we are moving along to 4A, which is a request from Habitat for Humanity of Orange County to remove/amend requirement to combine contiguous non-conforming lots per Unified Development Ordinance section 7.5.2. Before we get going, I do need to go ahead and recuse myself from this particular line item. My wife works over at Habitat, so I will go ahead and ask that there be a motion to abstain me. Thanks, Bob.
Move to allow Chris to recuse himself. Chris Johnston.
Okay. I guess I'm going to go ahead and
I can, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Oh, I guess I need to do it by roll. I'm so used to doing it the other way. So sorry. Chris Johnston, or Chris Austin,
Aye.
Elise Polly,
Aye.
Jeff Scott,
Aye.
Cooper Schultz,
Aye.
Jen Sykes,
Aye.
Scott Taylor,
Aye.
and Toby Vandermark.
Aye.
And now if Jen could take over the chair, that would be great. I'll be quiet.
Hey, everybody. I now get to talk us through this one, aka asking Margaret to talk us through item 4A, a request from Habitat that is leading to text amendments. Not terribly often we get this.
No, it's not. And so I put in your packet, and one day I'm going to remember to page number your packets. I'm sorry. The section 7.5.2, this is a common provision that's in zoning ordinances and unified development ordinances to require the combination of adjacent non-conforming lots when they're in the same ownership. Basically, operating from the premise that non-conformings are bad, and therefore you want to try and eliminate those things that are non-conforming. So when a person or an entity owns 2 lots side by side, or 3 lots, or however many lots side by side that are non-conforming, you would ask them or compel them to combine them before they develop them when they're vacant. And so if you read the rest of the page, you'll see that we've already put in an exception for non-conforming lots when one of them is already developed, to allow the other one to be developed. We put that provision in 15 or 20 years ago, and ended up with a house on Wake Street and one on Orange Street, and probably a few other places. So what Habitat has, and you've got a map in your packet, a handful of lots on Homont, the ones that are more purple, I guess, the 5 lots that are together. One of them is very non-conforming. It's only 25 feet wide, but the others are each 50 feet wide, and in a district that requires 75 feet of frontage and 10,000 square feet of space. And so they're asking to not have to recombine them, because then they could build another affordable house. If you look at the 3 that are at the intersection of Harper and Homont, because the first 2 are actually compliant from size, my take on it is that they have 3 lots there under the ordinance, and that any amendment here wouldn't apply to this, because the first 2 lots, while yes, they're a little narrow, they are over 10,000 square feet. And so those 2 lots are not non-conforming, which leaves Habitat owning 1 lot that's non-conforming. So there's nothing to combine it with from under this section. And so those 3 would be okay from where I sit. And so that's the request. We've created lots of exceptions for non-conforming situations, and I'm sure we could find a way for this to work if the board was so inclined, but I'll basically be quiet now. Richard Turlington is with us from Habitat, and so he can talk to us about their interests, and then we can kind of see where the discussion goes.
Yeah, hello, good evening. Our interest, I think our desire is to turn these 5 lots into 4 even lots, none of which would meet. It would have to be 3 lots to meet the zoning for the area. So I think I submitted a letter, I don't know if you saw it, but that we were hoping to turn this into 4 lots of 37 square feet with 56.25 width. And our goal is to get a 4th family in the area to serve, so Habitat would build all these lots. That is essentially our request. I can answer any questions if anybody has any.
And I think I have one from Margaret just to highlight that. In the middle of it, the language kind of highlighted in the red square is what we're focusing on.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the proposed amended language with the 2 or more.
No, that's actually the language that would come out. And so you could, there's a couple of options, obviously, going forward. In the note, in the cover sheet, I noted that the board may want to set some sort of minimum width for the lot so that it is a functional buildable lot. As you can see, there are some 25-foot platted lots existing around town. It's really hard to build anything meaningful on a 25-foot wide lot and leave any kind of a setback. So, if you wanted to say, like the follow-on section, the 7.5.2.2, we say that the vacant lots are not less than 50 feet wide. If you wanted to set it at 50 or even 45 feet to capture just a few more circumstances out there, I think that would be reasonable, and say that when the lots are 45 feet, 50 feet, whatever it is, they don't have to be combined. If they're less than that, then they do have to be combined. As a suggestion, you could just take it out altogether and roll the dice and see what we come up with. But those are sort of my 2 suggestions. And if the board gives me some direction, I can craft clearer language on what that in time for the public hearing that you would actually see in your packet. If you would grant me a little flexibility there rather than wordsmithing it all tonight.
I'll open it to the board if there are any further questions for Margaret or, yep, Jeff.
So this would be if I'm understanding, so this would be a text amendment. This would not be a waiver.
Correct. This would be a text amendment that would apply across town, which is why I'm highlighting the idea of setting a minimum lot width, because there are neighborhoods that have very small lots. When they were originally platted, as you can see all the dotted lines on the map that's in your packet. Yeah, this is not any kind of a subdivision. There's no way for Habitat to trigger a waiver request. It's not a conditional use permit. It's not a special use permit. So yes, it's a text amendment and applies town-wide. But it's a circumstance where we've already made some exceptions anyway.
So I guess, if it's for R10, is that right?
Yes.
So I guess, hypothetically, R10 single family, I guess most lots would probably have 5 foot minimum. Is that, that's probably not consistent everywhere, right?
Do you mean a setback or the
Setback.
small? Yeah, the setbacks are actually 15 feet.
Oh, really?
And another reason why I think this amendment is somewhat reasonable is I think when we come out of the comprehensive sustainability plan, we're gonna realize that there are provisions in our ordinance that are pushing that subdivision look and pushing lower density development than possibly we want to have, and that there might be some comprehensive changes to our lot sizes and our setbacks. Because right now, an R10 lot has to be 10,000 square feet. So that's a quarter acre, which is getting to be kind of big by current standards. It has to be 75 feet wide.
Wow.
Which is a lot. And then a 15-foot setback on each side. So that's a lot of land that we're leaving out there that could be developed within our urban services area. It's a lot of grass to mow. It's a lot of land to take care of. It's a lot of things that as land gets to be a little bit shorter supply, we're starting to question whether that's really the development plan we want.
Any other questions? Don't see hands. And Margaret, you briefly hinted upon it. This wouldn't qualify under the subdivision piece, and that was going to be my question, because I thought most of that triggered when you got to 4 lots, or it could trigger when you get to 4 lots.
No, because any owner who owns multiple lots can basically shuffle the lot lines around however they want, so long as they don't create more lots, as an exempt plat that they just bring to staff. So they could erase all of these lines and redraw them in a different configuration. That's something that's exempted under state law and doesn't qualify as a subdivision.
Okay, so this one, okay, I think I got it. Because that would have been the loophole I would have looked at.
Yeah, if somebody had previously combined all of these and it was one tract of land and they were asking to create 4, then it becomes a subdivision. It would still be a staff level subdivision, but these lots all existed prior to the implementation of zoning.
Okay. There we go. Great. Okay, any other thoughts on the idea of the text amendment before I ask if there are any thoughts on the details of it, particularly those requirements in 7522? I know one thing that comes to mind for me is the definition of adequate water and sewer. Does that, since we cover the ETJ, does that preclude anything with septic systems, basically?
No, not necessarily. It just hasn't come up. I'm not sure that this has come up out in the ETJ. And if it was something that was truly on septic, that's going to be controlled by environmental health and how small of a lot they're going to accept for a septic tank. So it's unlikely that this is going to happen in the ETJ where you're dealing with septic systems, just because they want the 20,000 square feet.
Okay. Does anyone have any thoughts on the width being set at 50?
With the perspective of trying to allow for more density, I know, Margaret, you said that if a lot is like 20 feet wide, it's really hard to build on that. I'd just love to hear your thoughts on 40 versus 50. If we are trying to tend in the direction towards allowing more density, then I would probably lean towards 40, but wanting to make sure that that would still allow people to be able to build, and want to see if there are any concerns around the number 40.
As long as we also address the language, we have a provision in the ordinance for narrow lots. And so long as we allowed these lots to qualify for that provision, that automatically reduces the side setbacks to no less than 10. And so on a 40-foot lot, that still leaves you 20 feet. So 45 would be a little better, because 25 feet isn't unreasonable. 20 feet feels a little narrow to me, and maybe Scott and Jeff can weigh in on building standards. 20 feet feels a little narrow if we're not going to add some more flexibility on the setback issue. But somewhere in there is probably the sweet spot for what creates a reasonable building envelope.
Scott or Jeff, any thoughts? I think Jeff is unmuting.
Oh, I don't have any specific thoughts. I mean, I think that the, it just depends on how creative the homeowner is, or the designer. I know that, once you start getting into like really narrow footprints, you kind of start to limit, the appeal of things, but, people like shotgun houses, maybe they'll come back.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Jeff on that. It's all about being creative. Are there any height requirements, Margaret?
There's a height limitation of, I believe, 45 feet in the residential district. So that's close to 3 stories. So that should make up a little bit for the narrow footprint to allow them to go up a little bit.
And that actually, the height issue, talking about sustainability, which I'm going to guess probably has some aging in place pieces that are going to come into play with that. That's another interesting aspect to think about with it too. But then again, those kind of situations, smaller will be better anyway. Again, this is also, all we're doing is going to move to send to public hearing in April. We don't have to hammer out any specific language. I think it's mostly providing Margaret with any guidance for clarification or anything like that. More of this can be hashed out at the public hearing and then the subsequent meeting in May about it. It's mostly just starting to think through it.
And really the only other component was if you wanted to sponsor it, or if you were generally supportive of it, but really felt it was better for Habitat to be the formal applicant and pay the fee. I mean, it really is just the fee aspect of it, of $300, who pays. If the planning board votes to send the item to public hearing, then there isn't a fee because you guys essentially sponsor the text amendment. And that's a lot of times why we bring text amendments to you, so that you can take that opportunity if it's something that you think needs some attention in the ordinance.
Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I mean, from what I understand, local governments are having financial challenges right now. Perhaps it would make sense to have them pay the $300 fee what I think I'm a little unclear though what the difference is. So it's whether if we send it to public hearing, then there's no fee. Otherwise, they need to pay the fee, and
then it just gets written as a whereas most text amendments just appear on your agenda as like, you know, they're staff initiated or board initiated. Occasionally we get an applicant who wants to go ahead and put the item out there for public hearing in a lot of ways, irregardless of what the planning board's initial thought of it is, or they come in when there's not time to get them before the planning board. That's really the only difference. The one, Elise, thank you for being worried about local government, but the one thing that hasn't slowed down during COVID is permitting. And we are ahead of our budget for planning revenues for this year. So we're doing good. $300 isn't going to make a difference one way or another.
I don't know, that's the one thing I was trying to read into there, because you mentioned that, so I was trying to understand what kind of thoughts there might be behind it. And on the other hand, I mean, of course, I think Habitat for Humanity needs to use their funds wisely. So given that perspective, I don't have a strong sense that they need to go through that process, and perhaps we just sponsor it and move it forward to public hearing.
So would that be, is that an entertainment of a motion to send this to public hearing as currently drafted?
Yes, I have moved to send it to public hearing as drafted.
Second. And Toby seconds. Elise moves, Toby seconds. And
Okay.
Margaret will call the roll.
Toby?
She's nodding.
Is that okay, Bob? You can nod too.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Scott Taylor,
Aye.
Jen Sykes,
Aye.
Cooper Schultz,
Aye.
Jeff Scott,
Aye.
Elise Polly,
I
and Chris Austin.
Aye.
Thank you. And now I believe Chris Johnston can just come back and there doesn't have to be any further motions. And Bob's nodding his head, so.
No fight to the death. Got it. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and move over to 4B, which is, oh, yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to move over to 4B, which is the Unified Development Ordinance, section 5.16 and 5.17, tables of permitted uses. I did want to go ahead and throw in the chat the zoning districts as well, just because we're looking through the uses, and sometimes it's good to just be able to reference back to the zoning districts and what they're for and what their meanings are and that sort of thing. Sometimes the acronyms kind of get lost in the shuffle. So that's in your chat there for the planning board members as well. And with that, Margaret, I'll let you go ahead and give us an overview.
Sure. So we started this conversation last month, and I realized, one, I must have started with a table that was less than current. And I found that I think it was a little bit confusing for folks to be working from a table that didn't show all of the uses. So the table that you have in your packet shows more of everything. I don't think I eliminated any uses that are in the table. So this kind of shows you the full breadth of all the uses that we have defined. And then I simplified the color coding. The gray lines and boxes they have been changed, but they reflect what I understood was consensus from the last meeting. And then anything that's kind of orange or peach is something that we either didn't touch on last time or is a slight difference from what we talked about last time, because staff has had some further conversation and discussion. And then there was only one thing that ended up being yellow. We didn't really talk good about outside storage at a builder contractor's office. So, and again, slightly different from last month. This month, the non-residential uses are first. Our non-residential districts are first, and then the residential districts are in the second grouping of columns. And I've eliminated all of the special use districts since they're going away anyway, that we don't really need to talk about uses allowed in entranceway special use and residential special use, because new land can't be applied to those districts, and all the uses are special uses in them anyway right now. So if folks would like, I'll just start going through the shaded boxes and see how we come out.
Margaret, would it be valuable if you shared your screen as we were going through and
I
for us to
can.
be able to have a central point of reference?
I can. The only thing that does is means that it is a little bit harder for us to see each other if somebody's trying to get someone's attention.
Okay.
So I would just encourage folks to shout out if they then have a question. And so let me see if I can make this work. Come here, share my screen to this one. And
Perfect. Thank you, Margaret.
so bank and financial institution is the first one that comes up. We had them, we've gone back and forth over the years on whether the drive up window for some of these uses is inherently attached to the use or whether it becomes a combination use. So like if a bank wanted to operate without a drive-up window, they would be a bank. But a bank with a drive-up window then becomes a combination use, and drive-up window used to appear in the table. So we've gone away from that. And in order to recognize that concept, that the drive-in window is inherently part of the bank or financial institution, it would be to make bank and financial institution a special use in central commercial and general commercial, and that's really aimed at managing the drive-up window.
Okay. Does anyone have any strong feelings about that in regards to, so Margaret, to confirm, that's in regards to just managing traffic and that sort of thing, or?
Traffic, loading spaces, all of that, whether it's something that folks want to see.
I will say, after my experience trying to navigate the drive up at the former bank, now known as the Wooden Nickel, last night, I would definitely keep it in central commercial just because of how much it can back up. General commercial, I'm less so, and it has zilch to do with function, but just the way to get through that stuff. That's my 2 cents. It is far less based on what Margaret's talking about than just personal experience at this point.
Okay. Does anyone else have any feelings about the Wooden Nickel?
Which used to be a Bank of America. That's why I'm saying it that way.
Right. It feels like every other building used to be a bank of some kind.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the SunTrust, I haven't seen it hit yet, but it's not a restaurant, so.
Okay. Does anyone feel that it shouldn't be a special use permit, it should just be permitted, or do we feel that that's perfectly fine? Okay, not hearing any objection, let's go ahead and keep moving.
So then last month, when we talked about bed and breakfast facility, we had talked about possibly allowing them permitted by right in the lower density zoning districts of AR and R40, thinking that that might spur some development. And those C's need to be S's, people. I'm glad you asked me to put this on the screen, Chris. I can correct my mistakes as we go.
I'm glad you had it in a Word document, not a PDF.
So I don't know if folks feel strongly about that. You know, we talked about that events tend to co-locate with bed and breakfast operations, and sometimes that can be an issue. But we don't have a lot of land that's zoned R40 and AR, and a lot of it does not have sewer, so it may be sort of a non-starter, but just wanted to throw that out.
right, I'm about to embarrass myself here. The S's, what does the S stand for specifically? I know the C.
It
and
should
I know
be, because I didn't finish.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. Good, good, good. Okay, so this is a change from bed and breakfast from being not permitted, conditional all the way across to now being permitted in AR, which is the agricultural residential, and then the R40, which is the wider, and then needing to come in for a special use permit on the closer residentials.
Yes.
I feel like we had feelings about this last time. Do we want to? Jen, I think you had something to say about the.
No, this was consistent, I'm pretty sure, with what I said.
Oh, perfect.
Mostly because I can think of that place out by St. Matt's that at one point was on the market as a secret bed and breakfast. Like, that's how the Zillow ad for it ran. And you're just looking at where in the world are people going to park, and they're going to be in their neighbors' yards.
Right. Okay. Toby, Elise, any feelings? Chris? Nope. Okay. Sounds like we are on board then. There's no one that feels against this particular proposal. We like spurring growth.
Okay, so then with a building or trade contractor's office right now, it is permitted in all of these districts. There is a note in the definition, though, that if said office needs outside storage, it can only be allowed in the districts where outside storage is also allowed. So that limits it to the more intense districts. I'm wondering whether we want to amend the definition to take that provision out. And open up the options for contractors' offices in neighborhood business and GC. There are standards in the ordinance for outside storage. It needs to be screened. And so I think the ordinance addresses what some of the externalities or negative impacts of the storage would be. So when we kick this around amongst staff, they're like, yeah, but then it creates a conflict with retail sales that have outside display. And I'm thinking, well, but that's outside display of goods that don't have to be secured in any way. And that's a different sort of look and a feel than a drainage contractor who wants to keep pipe stacked up in the backyard, or a yard guy who wants to keep a stack of mulch in the backyard, and as long as it's, meets the standards in the ordinance for outside storage, I'm not sure why this use wouldn't be allowable in neighborhood business or general commercial.
Okay. So allowing outside storage in the building trade contractor's office because it's being covered by existing ordinances, and we think that's okay.
So then with cemetery, we had talked about last time combining the regular cemetery with the faith-based cemetery and requiring those as special uses as shown. Child daycare, retaining their need to have a special use permit when they're in the residential districts, keeping them as permitted in most of the non-residential districts. Churches or places of worship, again, permitted in many of the non-residential districts, but special use permits in the residential districts. Those were kind of things we had talked about last time. Okay, this is new, the definition of clubs and community centers. These are two uses that have been defined in the ordinance since I came here. And aside from the Masonic Lodge, I'm not sure that we have another one. So we have two Masonic lodges in town, and possibly the Exchange Club. These are not uses that get a lot of use. And I'm not sure that the use itself isn't better suited by other categories in the table. So like a club or a lodge, there is no reason why, like the Masonic Lodge or the Exchange Club wouldn't be just as well suited to be either an office or a recreation or a park, depending on exactly how they operate. And same with a community center. Those uses and those standards, in my view, cover these uses and they don't need to be called out specifically. So it was just an attempt to make the list a little shorter.
So there's no difference in terms of use case between.
Well, what the ordinance allows and what state law allows is that when someone asks for a use and it's not in the table of permitted uses and it's not in there as specifically prohibited, then staff is obligated to interpret what that use is as a use that does appear in the table. So I'll give the example of, we have a use called personal service business, and it says basically personal service businesses are anything that takes care of an individual or their clothes and their general appearance. So that covers beauty salons, hair salons, nail salons, tattoo parlors, any number of things that all used to be individually listed in the table. And so now when somebody comes in and says, I want to do, what's that new hair removal where they a hair removal, I don't think it's called a salon, but you know, beyond waxing, there's other methods of hair removal. Well, that would still be a personal service business. Just because they ask for something that doesn't appear in the table, staff has to make an interpretation, placing it in the next closest thing. So
Can the applicant, challenge is such an, but can the applicant say, no, we don't think we're this, we're actually that, or?
I think so. I think because any staff decision is appealable.
Okay.
And I think we've even seen some examples of staff recommended this and they wanted that in a couple of cases.
Who is the final arbiter in something like that?
Appeals of staff decisions go to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
Right. I mean, it's the zoning administrator essentially, unless there's an appeal, in which case the Board of Adjustment gets to make the decision.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my thought is just that if there's very little use of it and there is an appeals process or a process for them to say, hey, we don't actually think we fall under a more restrictive or whatever, then I think at that point, that sounds fine.
Okay, moving
I'm
on.
not being wrong, by the way. So if anyone has any strong feelings otherwise, speak up.
So last time we talked about taking out dry cleaning or laundry plant, which is where the cleaning actually happens, because we don't have any of those. We have drop-off places, but we don't actually have the plant. And we have ways to, under some of the processing uses, we could capture that. Moving to dwelling accessory, I found a mistake. So dwelling accessory of some types are allowed in all residential districts, but the freestanding ones are not allowed in the AR or R40 district. I didn't know whether the board felt strongly about keeping that or changing that. Since we define two different types of accessory dwellings, those that are interior and those that are in a freestanding building, these Ps are probably still accurate because you can have an interior accessory dwelling in the R40 and the AR district. You just can't have them in a freestanding. So I just didn't know if the board wanted to go for ultimate clarity or whether they felt strongly about allowing accessory units basically in freestanding structures in AR and R40.
I mean, they're the easiest to fit in those.
Yeah, what was the rationale, Margaret, do you remember, for not allowing them freestanding in the larger lot districts?
Probably more just that we assumed that most of those districts wouldn't have water and sewer because we do require them to be connected to water and sewer, but in the off chance that somebody has water and sewer,
Right.
I'm not opposed to that. I mean, we're slowly becoming more and more flexible about accessory dwellings, and I don't think it's posing a problem. So I have no problem with opening that up a little bit in the accessory dwelling section.
The only thing I
So-
could think of maybe it would be the number of accessory dwelling units they would throw on them, but
We say you can only have one.
yeah, I was like, didn't we put a restriction in place, something like that? Because it would be like the way to back into creating like a subdivision or something.
So this would come with an ordinance language update as well.
Yeah, but I mean, we're making so many, we have so many amendments coming in
Throw it on the
April
pile.
that what's one more?
Okay. Anyone have any strong feelings about not allowing per permitted AR and R40? I'm seeing a lot of shakings of the head, so I think we're good to go there, Margaret.
Okay, and then attached units, when they've been in the regular R districts, and I'm sorry you can't see the headers here, I'm not smart enough to do that in Word. It has always been with the assumption that the district density is met. So if you have an R20 lot and you want to put 5 units on it, you have to have 5 times 20,000 square feet. So you basically have to have 2.5 acres to put those 5 units on. Is one way to get some density in a pocket while having a lot of open space. I'll tell you, not many people take advantage of this. Actually, I don't know that anybody has ever taken advantage of it above the 3 or 4 unit level, but it's something that we have in the ordinance. And as long as we made it clear that it's at the district density, I don't really see the need for these to be special use permits. But I'll defer to the board.
Would they change to permitted by use or permitted by right, or?
Yeah, they would be permitted by right. I mean, there's standards that have to be met. They still have to go through all the process to, submit a site plan and be compliant. It's not like they can just come in and pull a permit for it, but I'm not sure that there's really a need to go through the whole public hearing process when the per unit density is not changing. Unit per acre density is not changing.
So it would, if I'm understanding correctly, it basically to get attached or unattached, it's still the same square footage on the lots. Yep.
Yeah, this just allows you to build them in an attached method rather than detached. So if somebody wants to build 5 units, they could come in and divide up 5 lots. They'd each be 20,000 square feet and you'd have 5 houses. Or they could say, well, I'm just going to build on this little corner and I'm going to build 5 townhouses and I'm going to leave the rest.
Yep.
Same.
Yeah, like if you're trying to do like in DC, you had a bunch of those like old houses that got converted into the 4 apartment complexes.
Mhm.
And then you'd have like the community garden out back kind of thing. Okay.
Can also imagine some lots that might have some constraints on them, stream buffers, or want to preserve tree canopy or something like that, where this could be a useful tool.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the one that I think it came to Board of Adjustment where Matheson was subdividing some lots, and the only concern that I think anyone, or might have been planning, where the concern that came up was only about preserving the tree canopy.
Okay. Does anyone have any reason not to, if that we want to review this kind of thing? Have a little bit more oversight, because that's really what we're talking about when we talk about special use permit. We're adding a layer of additional oversight for this particular use.
I mean, the big thing is for something that's going to be looking at 5 to 19 units, how much land is still available for it? That's not going to go through some kind of subdivision type development anyway. That's going to come through a special use process anyway.
Right, it's probably gonna seek a rezoning and come in for something else because they're gonna be able to get more units on it.
Right.
All right, any objections? Nope. Okay, let's keep moving.
So electronic gaming operation, last time I was saying, let's get rid of it, please. But then after talking with more of the staff, we still get a lot of requests for this. And so even though we're not really sure what the state law says on this, it's probably better to leave the use in the ordinance to ensure that we get the spacing and the treatment that we wanted rather than just throwing it open. So as much as I would love to get rid of it, I think we probably need to keep it.
And Margaret, just for my clarification, the PA.
It's an accessory use. So
Accessory.
if you go into like a restaurant or a convenience store in some of these are like general commercial neighborhood business, and put, I think it's 3 or fewer machines in, then it's an accessory use. But if you want to do a standalone, and that's the only use that's there, then it can only go in this high intensity commercial and general commercial as a special use permit. And it has to be spaced a lot from residential and places where kids might congregate and all manner of other things. It's a hard use to cite if it's a standalone use.
Okay, so if it's PA that's saying it's permitted by right as an accessory, and you can
As
only have
an
minimum.
accessory to another use. Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, cool. Just wanted to
Paul
understand.
Lombardi, you opened up a Keynote TV screen in it before the pandemic.
And the downside of getting rid of the entire use is then,
Then staff has to interpret it as something else, and it's not going to have that spacing requirement.
gotcha. Okay.
So last time we talked about making event center a permitted use in business park, which only left it as a special use in central commercial. Extended care facility, we talked about taking it out of all of the residential districts. Yes, the one we have, Elmcroft, is zoned AR, and they have a special use permit to operate there. Since they have the special use permit, we're really not making them non-conforming, and I would really rather approach them about rezoning their property at some point than allowing another extended care facility to come in a fairly rural setting. I don't not sure that that's a wise choice.
Okay. Any feelings, anyone? About the permitted use, which is the only thing I think we changed. Okay, let's keep going.
Family childcare home. So this is when it's only just a few children. Those P/Cs that we used to have in there, which meant that it was permitted by right up to a certain size, and then it became a conditional use if it became larger. Again, this is for a limited number of children.
It's like 2 or 3 or 4.
Well, it's like less than 10.
think
I could
that's-
actually look it up since I'm here and have an ordinance.
It's like,
But it's a much smaller, it's not your true standalone daycare center, so it seems a little less necessary for the added review. And those breakpoints of number of children come from the state.
Yeah.
In their permitting. So a family childcare home does take place, it has to be a dwelling unit. More than 2, but less than 9 children. So, 9 children, yes, it's not going to be a quiet house, but it's not like 75 or 100 students that you might get at a full-blown daycare center where it's really problematic to have in a neighborhood. So I would suggest making these Ps and just let it meet the ordinance requirement for everything else related to daycares.
Yeah, I was going to say to have 9 children in a dwelling, you'd really have to get that out in order to get it to meet those requirements for a daycare center, or not a daycare center, but an in-home dwelling. Do you don't have any idea in terms of how many or what the size is of the ones that we currently have in terms of per children?
I'm not convinced that we have anything that's a family childcare home. At least if we do, it's not one that's come in for permitting recently. It's one that's been in existence for a long time, because I don't remember running anybody through that process. I think all the childcare centers we have are actually childcare centers, and either are not somebody's house, or they're flying under the radar somehow.
Uh-oh. I think my kid went to a home daycare, so hold on. What was the name?
Yeah, there were a lot of those for those who grew up in the 90s. I would defer to the people who lived in the more planned communities if that sounds like it would be a nuisance.
Well, under normal times, people are at work during work hours, so.
I was gonna say, it's like you can also like, and I think do a noise ordinance complaint if you hear too much.
No, because I'll tell you, somebody's already tried that with the little school, and the police pretty much laughed when they said, okay, children playing outside is a noise violation? You gotta be kidding me. So I don't think a noise violation is going to happen.
Okay. So we need to make a decision then about permitted versus conditional. Margaret?
Well, it
just
can no
for-
longer be conditional, so it's either permitted by right
Oh.
or it's a special use permit,
Right. Sorry.
which
Okay.
makes the threshold pretty high for 9 students.
I mean, if you're gonna do 9, go ahead and do 10 and make it the official daycare. I mean, you get tax deductions at that point, right?
But like I said, I think almost everyone we have in town is a formal daycare center, and that we don't have any of these family childcare homes. It's probably that the permitting process through the state has gotten a little more onerous, and it's too much work to try and have one of these in a house.
Mine honestly I would honestly say leave it as the special use, because I don't think you're gonna encounter it. And if you do, it's gonna be talk them into doing the daycare.
I'd be a little nervous about.
Flying under the radar, honestly. If they're
Right.
doing it, they're flying under the radar. That's my thought.
I think this one we need to have a little bit more discussion on. Chris, you went unmute for just a second, so I'm going to pull you back in.
Yeah, as my first actual input to the meetings, I live in a neighborhood, and I don't want to seem cold-hearted, but 9 kids during the day, especially with my wife working from home, it seems a little much. I don't know. I don't like to impose on people's businesses, but if it's going to be in a neighborhood, that seems like I would personally like some oversight on that particular application.
Margaret, could you scroll up real quick? What's the header we're looking at here in terms of where that starts?
It starts with AR.
AR.
And so
then-
we could make it match, we don't actually allow a full-blown child daycare in AR, but we did set them as special uses across the board in the residential district. So, that's fine. If that's what the board wants, I'm fine with that. But certainly we can send it to public hearing. Sending it to public hearing that way, you can always, you can send it to public hearing that way and then change it back to P
Right.
When it come
Yeah.
back and consider it without any problem.
Right.
Yeah, we'll smoke out who's doing it.
People don't read any notices about text amendments, Jen, you know that.
I do, but I'm pretty convinced we're never going to hear hide or hair about this one.
I would like a little bit more input though on this one though, if anyone wants to chime in before we make any kind of decision on that. Chris, I appreciate your first one. That was good. Keep doing that. do more of that.
I mean, hey, Chris,
Go for it, Toby.
I don't have a problem. I do have a problem with it on the smaller lots, because if you got 8, 9 kids running around outside on a 10,000 square foot lot, that's a lot of kids on a small piece of property, especially if there's a house in the middle of it. There's not a lot of land for them to run around with and play on. And I think that for the neighbors is worse than just having them indoors. Indoors is not so bad, you won't hear them, but when they're running around outside and screaming and hollering and stuff in a small lot, that's kind of iffy to me. I think maybe on the bigger lots, you could use it as special use if you want to have some control, but not put it in as smaller lots at all. I don't know. It just feels, that's a toughie. We'll just make it special use on all of those lots.
Elise?
I definitely agree with Toby. I was gonna say something really similar about how can we look at all these options and maybe have a slight difference between the smaller lots and the larger lots. I'm curious why, I don't know if you guys can hear my kids in the background. They're really loud right now. I'm very sorry for that. There are only 2 of them. But I wonder why the child daycare isn't an SUP under AR, first of all, because it seems like there's a lot of space. And then secondly, I would lean towards the family child care home potentially not being permitted in R10, or maybe at least SUP. And then, you know, maybe permitted for AR and R40, but then SUP for the others or something like that. Because I think that Toby is exactly right. For those smaller lots, it's gonna make a bigger difference. You're closer to your neighbors and all of that.
I think to Margaret's point about normal times, people being at work, I think even after the pandemic ends, if it ever ends, I think people working from home in the neighborhood is going to be more normal, at least from a flexible standpoint. So I think it probably would have more of an impact in the near future, at least.
I'll, Hooper, do you have any input, anything that you want to say, or? It's not, that's perfectly fine.
I think that what everyone's saying makes sense.
Okay.
So I don't have any strong feelings. I think definitely it makes sense to make this special use for a smaller lot.
Okay.
So.
I'll play devil's advocate here. By making it a special use permit, by definition, if you're doing a home daycare setup, you're going to be a smaller organization, if an organization at all, right? And so by making the special use permit, are we basically saying this isn't going to happen here because is someone going to be able to make it through the entire process of coming through and that sort of thing? Or
Well, I think it goes to Jen's point that if we make the process the same for a family child care home and a regular daycare center, then somebody's just going to go ahead and allow the 10th child. They're going to figure out how to fit the 10th child in and become a full daycare center.
okay.
Or it's still going to be you and your neighbor are taking care of 4 kids and you're not really doing it as a business. Or the thing that's come up in the pandemic where people develop those like 8-kid pods to study at different houses and rotate them around in the neighborhoods. That probably by definition here fits under a family child care home. Is it a full-blown business? Is it being permitted, even if they do it at the same house each time? No.
Not if it's not being done for pay. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's a sharing arrangement, then it's not a business.
Yeah.
My kid went to Aunt Rennie's. I finally remembered where it was. Aunt Rennie's daycare. Okay, so.
Is this what I'm hearing? Permitted in AR and R40 and a special use permit in the 2015 and 10?
I think, do we have anyone who objects to that or wants it to be permitted further down, special use permitted further up? Or do we feel good about that balance?
So we can see if anything happens or hash it out in a couple of more months.
Okay. Seen a lot of nods, which I feel good about. I'm glad we talked about that one a little bit more. Margaret, I think we're good on that.
Okay. So farmers market, we apparently had them as possibly permissible in AR and R40, and that got missed last time as well. So I didn't know whether folks. Now this is a farmer's market when it's basically run by a nonprofit, not a farm stand, just to be clear. This is more like the two that we have downtown when there's some kind of organized multiple vendors. And so not a farm stand at a single farm. This is multiple vendors and some sort of organization overseeing them.
So would basically the fact that the one we had at the hospital has kind of migrated to Cane Creek Farm, is that what this is highlighting, or would Cane Creek Farm still be technically a farm stand? Even though they're not having multiple vendors.
Where is Cane Creek Farm? I don't think it's in our
Well,
jurisdiction.
J is the other part of it. But
Where
if
is
they
it?
were yeah, they're down off like Bradshaw Quarry.
Yeah, not our jurisdiction. But then the
Yeah.
other issue is that basically
Theoretically,
agricultural uses in the ETJ, we really can't regulate. So
yeah, I was just saying if that farm were closer to town, and is it a farm stand or is it now because they have more than one vendor at their farm stand? Are they now a farmer's market?
they would be a farmer's market if they have more than one vendor.
That's what I'm kind of getting at is we would have, like, we have an AR, we have a farm on it, they invite their neighbor to sell eggs, therefore it becomes kosher.
It's probably, well, if it's in the ETJ, we can't regulate it.
So in that case, Bob, should we just take it out and not talk about it in the AR and R40 district at all? Since we probably really can't regulate it?
I mean, I don't see why not. If it's a problem, we'll change it.
I like taking things out.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think that's what they've kind of modeled into at this point until the hospital lets them back in anyway.
Okay. Group care facility.
Group care facility, so that's sort of the halfway house. Let's see, there's family care and group care. Family care is family care as opposed to a family care, family child care. Family care home is like 4 individuals.
Up to
Whereas
6, I think.
A group care is 6 or more.
Right.
So these are basically group living situations for folks who really can't be independent. It's not meant for pre-release or anything like that from a detention type situation, but we had these as conditional uses these uses are fairly well protected in state law to make sure they get treated as close to residential uses as possible. But we do have spacing requirements based in the definition. And so I'm perfectly comfortable making them permitted by right and then make them just follow the standards in the ordinance. I think we have one on Nash Street that probably most people don't even know that it's not a house.
Correct.
So your suggestion up top on family care home would
Well,
also be.
that would just stay because that's what it was P's. But these group care facilities, which are more people, like 6 individuals, is to just go ahead and make them P's as well, rather than conditional use permits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for the sake of privacy for individuals, and like you said, they are very, if they're run right, they're very well regulated. And I will comment if they're run right.
So in
that's
terms
less about anything we could do ever. That's the state's responsibility to get right.
Right. So in regards to a use protected by the state and the fact that there's also other requirements on it and that sort of thing, do we have any qualms about group care facility being set to P, to permitted? Okay, I think we're good there.
So in hotel and motel, we had not talked about making hotel permitted by right in the central commercial district. since the event center is the thing that triggers the concern, and an event center is a special use in the central commercial district, just a hotel didn't seem to be quite so concerning. And again, I don't know where we're going to see one, but I wondered if we didn't want to just go ahead and make that a P.
I think most businesses would be fine with that, and I have no idea where it would fit.
Yeah, no idea.
What would be, I mean, there'd be a parking requirement for a hotel in central.
Right.
Right.
Right. And if we take away waivers, then they can't offer to do it some other way. So,
I mean, because I would anticipate that there could be a hotel in downtown Hillsborough someday.
yeah.
And if, you know,
But
so,
that has parking.
excuse me?
Oh, no, wait, that building does not have parking. The lot across the street from it has parking.
Okay. So permitted for that, for commercial, central commercial. That sounds reasonable for everyone? Nods? Good. Future growth? Great.
Then we come to our motor vehicle uses. And so this column is general commercial. This column is high intensity commercial, and then this is economic development district. So fuel stations, having them be required to have a special use permit in general commercial and economic development district, allowed by right in high intensity commercial. But then changing the ones that are about repair and sales to be special uses in general commercial, but allowed by right in high intensity commercial. High intensity commercial zoning normally has no residential anywhere near it. And so allowing these uses by right just seems to kind of make sense. It is our most intensive zoning district. And so where better to have places to service your car or to buy a car than in that district.
And they'll also have the bigger lots for the display. And given our experience with the dealers, they want those big lighting requirements.
Yep.
Do we have decent specific standards for those, Margaret? So that if they're
Yes.
allowed as of right, I mean, they're not like unregulated. They still have to meet certain lighting and setback and buffer and et cetera.
And a limited display of vehicles in front of the building. Yes. Again, we talked a little bit about this non-residential use in historic houses. Bob, you can chime in here. We've got 2 or 3 of these permitted, and they already have their conditional use permits in place. If we take the use out of the ordinance, but they still have their conditional use permit, they're protected, right? They don't become non-conforming in any way. You're muted.
Sometimes it's better that I'm muted, I suppose. But yeah, they still enjoy the protection of the permit that was granted whenever.
Okay. Yeah, just about every lot that qualified, there's this weird requirement that like 50% of one of the lot sides has to be shared with something that's already commercially zoned and blah, blah, blah. We've seen almost all of those that we're going to see. And so I would just as soon take it out than continue to tell people, well, yeah, it's available, but not for your lot.
Okay.
Moving on to parks, allowing athletic or community parks by right in our commercial districts with the exception of, that's neighborhood business. It's unlikely that somebody's going to attempt to put an athletic or community park in neighborhood business district. Those are supposed to be only about an acre at a time. And they're also likely to be government initiated. So the most likely place for them to go is in the core of the commercial, the office institutional, central commercial, general commercial, high intensity commercial. And then go ahead and we talked about the special use permits last time.
You say government initiated, like?
Yeah, governments, I mean, an athletic park or a community park is going to be government owned. it's gonna be owned by the town of Hillsborough or the county.
Okay.
You don't see too many people building soccer complexes or, baseball fields. That's just not particularly common.
Mhm.
Okay. Skate parks, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Town's trying. We just can't quite get there.
Any strong feelings about permitted by right for park athletic or community?
I will say there was demand on the Facebooks to get a splash park in town. That one came back up too.
Okay.
Well, again, who's going to build a splash park if it's not the government?
Or, yeah, because the subdivisions have already kiboshed that one with Collins Ridge.
It's $5 per splash. All right. So if we feel good about that, parking as principal use, surface or structure.
Right. I'm really thinking that the opportunity is extremely limited for parking as a principal use anywhere, and that the value of our lands and the attractiveness for building is, and the fact that all of our uses have parking on site really makes the possibility of seeing somebody want to develop parking as a standalone thing to be fairly limited, and thought it was probably worth just go ahead and saying it could be built by right.
That I'm thinking of, and this is gonna sound, this has probably very little to do with planning, is with the sustainability plan coming up, would there be a motivation to kind of minimize cars and driving, and that would be a motivation to put that into special use? Just because would it be better to align with those kinds of goals with the sustainability plan?
Are you saying make it harder to build a parking lot because we don't want people driving, and therefore we make it a special use? Is that what you're saying?
I'm wondering if that is an argument that's going to come out of the sustainability plan. Yeah. I don't know. And so that's just a thought I had thinking about it. I think that might come up from the town board in the public hearing.
Yeah.
They're going to be more on the pulse of what they have in mind for sustainability than I do. I do good enough to remember to recycle.
But at that point, if they've got, I mean, at a certain point, we kind of have to let them drive that
Yep.
buggy and then react to it rather than presume or anything along those lines. They
Yeah,
might
but
want to
that's
have parking for electric cars or something like that.
well, that's my point is I just want to highlight that this is probably something that'll tie into that sustainability goal.
Gotcha.
So we can revisit it in 18 months.
Yeah. Cool.
Somehow last month we missed the pharmacy convenience needing a special use permit for the drive-up window in GC. So staff just wanted to capture that. Just for consistency's sake. Recycling materials collection centers, I'm not sure why these are called out as an independent use, and so I'm suggesting that they go away. So this is the drop-off center like behind Home Depot and things like that. I just don't see the point to call them out separately.
Did it have anything to do with at some point in time thinking that we were going to get the recycling center that's out on, like, I think Eubanks? Is that it?
No, this was put in specifically when the county came to the town for the recycling center that used to be at the old Walmart on Mayo Street. Was to regulate it in some way, but I just this has become such a common thing that I just don't see the point in calling it out separately.
Got it.
Research facility, now this is the more basic research facility, is to allow it as permitted in this is the business park, again, to help align business park and EDD, which are these two side by side. And also, if we're going to allow an intense research facility in the industrial parks, why wouldn't we allow a regular research facility in the industrial districts? Just a suggestion.
Makes sense. Okay.
Rooming and boarding house. I'm not aware that we have ever had one. We've had a couple inquiries, but it's been a long time. So I'm just not seeing the point in having that as a permitted use in our district. I mean, when's the last time you heard of a rooming or boarding house if it wasn't a movie set in the 1920s or 30s? Moving on to schools. Right now, every Orange County school, let's put it that way, not public school, every Orange County school is zoned office institutional. And I wondered if rather than allowing schools to go in every district, we kind of compel school properties to get rezoned and then come in for the special use permit. So this is office institutional. And this is adaptive reuse to capture the expedition school. And then this is business park to capture the Eno River Academy up on NC 57. And then this was allowed, there's a spacing requirement tied to this so that there can only be one every so often. And that was just a suggestion going through that perhaps we don't allow schools everywhere and go ahead and require the review and compel the rezoning. So there's sort of two bites at the apple for the public to talk about whether or not that's what they want to see.
So the property would be purchased and then they would have to submit an application for rezoning to office industrial.
Office institutional.
Institutional, sorry.
Yeah.
And then after that, then they'd have to come in for a special use permit and then it would get run through again.
Yep.
Okay. Is there any way to capitalize that P that's in the P plus?
It is capitalized. That is a capital P, I believe.
An asterisk next to it, not a plus.
Yeah, there's an asterisk next to it.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Does anyone have any strong feelings about making a school go through 2 hoops to jump rather than just the one, the special use permit? Does anyone feel like arguing? Okay. All right. Sounds like we're ready to move on.
Yeah, and for higher education, just go ahead and requiring the special use permit in the adaptive reuse district. I know the folks at Cotton Mill had specifically asked for that flexibility so Expedition could go in there. And I think we're all seeing something that was missed by allowing that school to go in by right without some sort of review about the traffic because it was an existing developed site. It was difficult for DOT to analyze what the traffic impact was. And so I think that was an oversight and we should not have been that flexible. And so not that we're going to see that come up again because adaptive reuse can only be applied where there's a building of a certain size. I would just like to set us up to not repeat that, what I see as a mistake. We were a little too flexible that time.
Seen a pretty vigorous head nod from Jen.
I will also add to that, it led to kindergartners getting to tour a brewery as a part of an educational trip.
They start them young.
Is that not educational?
I was very proud and posted many a picture of it last week.
There's a lot of science in that.
Okay. Seems straightforward. School vocational.
Yeah. So this is office institutional, high intensity commercial, and adaptive reuse. So I'm proposing to take it out of there, leave it in the business park, economic development district, and industrial, seeing that it seems to align pretty well with those sorts of zonings and not so much with the traditional commercial zonings. I think a lot of times when we talked about this, we talked about truck driving school, which obviously there are other kinds of vocational schools than that, but it does seem to align a little bit better with the business park and industrial zonings, maybe rather than the commercial.
I did just want to make sure that the trucks, you could learn how to make a U-turn in a truck in those districts. Dan would be ashamed if we did not ask that. And then, yeah, I think the bigger thing nowadays is having seminar rooms in office buildings.
Okay,
And last thing, we're going to combine telecommunication towers and require those to get special use permits everywhere they go. Take out vehicle restoration as a business use. And then we kind of skipped over veterinarian last time. And since I'm really aiming at trying to get rid of this first column, which is limited office zoning, leave it as permitted in neighborhood business and general commercial, but I think office institutional and central commercial are probably not great locations for veterinarian or animal hospitals with, you know, any kind of an outside exercise area.
I'm sorry, Margaret, which one was the one before central commercial?
limited office.
The P is in neighborhood business.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then the other one that's getting dropped.
That's limited office. That only applies to two pieces of property that I'm
Right.
hoping I'm going to convince those two owners to come in for rezonings.
So we're dropping it from limited office, central commercial, and what was the other one?
And office institutional.
Office institutional.
Because really the only place we have office institutional zoning is on schools or county owned property.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just trying to think. I know, I was just trying to think about like the bigger animal hospitals if we ever got one of those here. But I think we're covered.
Yeah, we have at least we have 4 veterinarians already, and they're all would be compliant with this arrangement.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was thinking of the Triangle Vet Referral in Durham. That's bigger than any of the ones we have here, because it does all those surgeries and specialty services we don't offer here. And would something like that, if we ever get a population big enough out here, fit? Then I think we're okay. Because we've got it in our bigger ones, right? High intensity and stuff like that.
And so that takes us through the
4B.
use table.
Okay, now we just have the rest of the meeting to get through.
Move send to public hearing.
What?
That's
Oh,
what
right.
we have to do. We got to move to send it to the public hearing.
She's right. She's absolutely right. Anyone in second?
Seconded.
Toby, seconds. So now we need a motion, or not a motion, a vote.
Chris Austin,
Aye.
Chris Johnston,
Aye.
Elise Polly,
Aye.
Jeff Scott,
Aye.
just in time. Hooper Schultz,
Aye.
Jen Sykes,
Aye.
Scott Taylor,
Aye.
Toby Vandermark.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Excellent.
Unanimous.
We are on to 4C. We would need to talk about the review process for special use permits.
Correct. So now that we have figured out which uses are by right and which ones are special, we come back to the concept of who is it that's going to be reviewing special use permits. Because now, since special use permits are getting separated from the rezoning process, we just have to pick a board. And so we can stick with the process that we have now of them coming to the planning board and the town board on the quarterly session. And then you guys will have to change back and forth between handling legislative hearings and quasi-judicial hearings, which I'm sure you're able to do. Or we could just route them special use permits to the Board of Adjustment. Almost every process the Board of Adjustment has is quasi-judicial. They have a hearing every month, so things could move faster and not have to wait. Right now, there is from application to decision, folks are waiting, a solid 2 to 3 months for their review and approval. Whereas if we went with the Board of Adjustment to review special use permits, they would go much faster. Not only because the board could make a decision the night of the hearing, but they could also, there is a hearing every month. So there's more opportunity and a faster turnaround time. So I think you can kind of read between the lines that staff is lobbying for that option. We have other work that we'd like the planning board to be doing, taking a little bit broader view of things, focused a little bit more on the policy aspect. I know the board enjoys, or at least I get the impression that the board enjoys plan review. And if it was really more a matter of making sure that you knew what was in the hopper and moving through the process, we can certainly make sure that you know that. And there was one other thing. I want the board to think about how much any given design plan has actually been impacted or changed or made better going through the long special use permit process. And I won't say anymore.
A decision about our future.
Yes.
I mean, I think, Margaret, you did a great job of laying out the options and giving really good reasons. Voting that right now, I'm in a meeting. It sounds like it makes a lot of sense to send over to the Board of Adjustment in terms of the fact that they meet more frequently, that there would be a monthly opportunity versus quarterly opportunity. I like the idea of being able to work more on policy and be able to take a bigger picture view of some of the upcoming plans and visions for the town. I think that's exciting. I'll admit that it is really nice to know what's upcoming. And when I drive around town and I see certain buildings coming up, I have a sense of what's going to be there, what it's going to look like, and that's really nice. I did hear you comment, though, that there would be opportunities. I don't know exactly what it would look like, but if we were able to have one of the items on our agenda every once in a while, I don't know if we want to have it maybe quarterly, a quarterly update of what's upcoming to the town, and just saying these are some of the developments that have gone through recently, and just giving a really quick overview would be nice, because I think that's what I enjoy about the public hearing process. So yeah, I think you've done a good job of laying it out, and it seems like it would make more sense to move in that direction.
Thank you, Lisa.
I think the quarterly feedback would also give us a chance to see how the policy is playing out, and if we need to change the policy, we can do that. But I agree, I'm not the type of person that likes to get weeded down in the details. I'd rather look at systems and policy creation. So.
Okay. This is going to be one of those ones where we kind of need to hear from everybody too. So just get ready.
Anytime you can speed things up, that's I'm in favor for it. Send it over to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
Well, this is my last meeting, so it doesn't matter to me what you guys decide.
You've got the most institutional knowledge. Like, this is valuable.
There we go. Now, I think it makes sense to go ahead and do there'll be a public hearing and have the Board of Adjustment make those decisions, or whatever it is they're going to do, make the decisions. And if we're, if the planning board is notified quarterly what's going on, I think that's probably enough. You can always listen in to a Board of Adjustment meeting if you really want to know what's going on, because they're open too for everybody. So it's not so much that you're going to lose, a lot by not having all of those decisions and not have the SUPs coming to you all the time and having to say, oh, what are they doing? I think it's better for us to be able to say, let's look at the future. Let's see where we're heading. Let's see how things what we think things should be or how they should be done, and work it that way versus really getting down into the nitty gritty of everything. But that's going to be for you to do. I'm just going to watch.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. And It makes more sense to have Board of Adjustment tackle those things specifically and have us work, dealing with the amendments and the policies and stuff. Cause it, the way it breaks down sometimes, we spend so much time dealing with waivers or some specific issue that somebody has. And then when you get to the, policies and procedures and all that kind of stuff, everybody's just kind of exhausted and it's kind of like a footnote. So I think it makes sense.
It seems like an opportunity to streamline things. So
I'm gonna play devil's advocate again. All right. I like the streamlining. I'm all for that. The only thing I'll say is I don't think more time has been bad or has not led to good outcomes from neighbors and that sort of thing, and the ability to have them talk. And then I know it takes time, but a month later happens, and then the developer has talked with the neighbors and they've had their time to talk and back and forth. And all of a sudden, a line is made into the septic or something along those lines. I think that's been valuable. I definitely understand the need to prioritize and streamline and that sort of thing, but I don't know. I don't see it as a zero gain if more time is taken along the path, in terms of the neighbors being able to state what they feel and that sort of thing, and then it goes to the town board and then the planning board and that sort of thing. So, but I love streamlining, so I am happy to defer.
We can address some of those issues. I mean, if the board wanted to institute a need for neighborhood meetings in advance of a Board of Adjustment hearing, we could always do that for certain types of development. That's one option. And, we amend the ordinance all the time. So if it doesn't work, we can always bring it back to the quarterly session. And, very limited harm will have been done. Sure. But, some ordinances do require, neighborhood meetings, and we haven't gotten to the part where I've laid out the concept of some of the conditional districts. And I'm thinking about a conditional zoning district for, infill development, which is where the public is most engaged and most impacted by what happens.
Right.
And I see that as a conditional zoning district that you and the town board would still handle. So you would see those. They would be they would not be quasi judicial decisions. They would be legislative, but it would give that impact and discussion in front of more boards and for a longer period of time on the more impactful projects, if that's of any help to folks.
Yeah. Like I said, I completely understand the need for speed. I understand that there's a cost associated with having to go through legislative or through the planning boards and that sort of thing. I just keep coming back to it feels like a steam valve for the neighbors to make sure that they feel like they're part of the process. They get lots of parts of the process as laid out in the review for the special use permits that Margaret's laid out here. But I see the value of having the Board of Adjustments be able to make a decision right there and have it taken care of and so on and so forth. I still think that lag time is not nothing. For the neighbors to be able to feel like they can, organize, they can get together. I like the idea of the neighborhood meeting thing. Is that something where someone from town government would be a part of that or something along those lines? Or is that just something where the developer is required to meet with the neighbors?
You can do it both ways.
Oh, good.
What I would propose is that the applicant be responsible to organize it and host it and run it, but that a member of staff has to be available and that it happen at a public facility. Because we had one for some project, and I can't remember what the project was now, years ago, and the applicant hosted it at their office.
Yep.
Where it was not nearly large enough.
Yep.
People didn't know where they were going. And so by making the town facility available and requiring a staff person to be present, so that when the applicant writes back and says, oh, everybody loved it, and that wasn't quite so much the case. You had that somewhat disinterested third party to say, well, these issues were raised and these issues were not addressed and that sort of stuff. And so that is, if we can identify which types of projects those might be necessary for. I mean, I wouldn't want to see them required for everything that's a special use permit, but for certain things, I can see where it's reasonable to have that, and maybe it's something that we require on these conditional zones when we get there, so that those proposals that have the most impact have a little bit of extra review and public discussion on them.
Yeah, I think that'd be really valuable. And
Yeah, and
Cool.
speaking of remembering that development and that meeting, and many of the people in that neighborhood who struggled to even get into the office because it had some ADA issues. And then the follow-up meeting, which staff did have. One thing that has very visibly come out of that is one of the risks, kind of a lot of these changes are going to open up, is the Board of Adjustment has a very different mindset. So I can definitely see from experience that developer has found ways to use adjustment to push some of those proposals. It's a bit of venue shopping, if you're familiar with that concept. So there's some of that. Again, those meetings are not attended by the public. Usually the subjects seem a bit more obtuse to the public. So that risk, I remember the follow-up actually to that development after it was withdrawn from planning. There was the conditional use hearing, and maybe 5 people from that group actually showed up to discuss it, by comparison. And when you've had other issues come up through the planning board, you can get 20 people from that neighborhood to show up. So there is some education on the part of the neighbors about this change that's going to be occurring with this kind of proposal, to have that input come through, as well as what they are allowed to testify about. With all of this, anyway, that's just an ongoing struggle to begin with. The perspective from the Board of Adjustment, I would say, is I just wonder how burdensome it could be, given that one case can take 2 hours to discuss. So if it's like there's 3 or 4 applications, that could be a 6-hour meeting.
Well, we can manage the number of applications that are at a hearing just like we did for you. And since they're meeting every month, then it's not such a delay when you say, well, sorry, the February agenda is open, but you can go in March. That's better than saying, well, the January agenda is full, you have to wait till April.
Yeah, and the one question I did want to clarify, and I know one of the things that's come up is removing the option for waivers through all of this. Do variances still stay in place?
Well, yes, absolutely. Variances stay in place, but the problem is that the threshold for a variance is so extremely high under North Carolina law that, but yeah, variances absolutely remain. Bob, is it even legal for us to take variances out of the ordinance? No, we must allow variances.
That's the other thing that would come up with this change, is removing waivers, and doing site plan review is going to be a very big challenge. But doing this and having that option for variance, even if it is that high threshold, it gives applicants a little more. You get 5% flexibility versus 0% flexibility versus 90% flexibility in some cases with waivers through the current process, but you don't go from 90 to 0. You still have some option over there. Those are kind of the points I'd want to highlight about that kind of shift. And definitely whenever the Board of Adjustment meets next, bring that concern up and that issue. Again, because it's not just site plans that get reviewed. I think there's been like 2 appeals of Historic District Commission decisions this year, and some appeals by neighbors of staff review stuff.
Right, and one of the other changes that is authorized under the new state law and that the HDC is actually requesting is that appeals from the Historic District Commission can be made to go directly to court. And the HDC is supportive of that language to allow them to go directly to court. And so that would come off of the Board of Adjustments plate if that goes into the ordinance. And we do have some work needed in the ordinance before we take out waivers to make sure that those sections that are at all vague or problematic get sorted out, and that we insert flexibility where we want flexibility in that. And it's just, we can't get that ready for April. That's just gonna have to wait. There's too much ordinance to write in too short a time.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, those are kind of the main issues I highlight. I think that change will, until there is some education with the public, definitely lead to a diminishment in public input without some kind of forced neighborhood meeting. And I 100% agree with Margaret. Never let a developer do that without staff present again. Dear sweet Jeebus.
So,
We can also beef up the letter that goes out to folks and say, this is your only opportunity to speak on this project.
Yeah.
Because, you know, as much as people ignore a lot of what's put out, I think those letters, they actually do read.
Yeah.
And if it's said in very big letters, this is your only opportunity. We've changed our process. Yes, you're going to this board rather than the other board, and this is your only opportunity. I think folks will come.
Yeah, and it is, I mean, I've tried across different projects when it impacts people I know to tell them to come out, and it is just the number of times I have to remind them, sorry, I texted you, yo, this is in your neighborhood, you might want to pay attention to this, and you skipped it, and now you're complaining about the decision. You didn't present evidence. I can't rule. However, you had no evidence to support when I made a decision. Sorry.
well, this comes back to the whole, you know, speed versus community input and that sort of thing. And what's our purpose? Is our purpose to get this through as quickly as possible? Is our purpose to give a sounding board for people, even if things don't change? They still get face-to-face time with community government. They get face-to-face time with you know, the developer. They get to see the people in a forum like that. I don't know. I just keep coming back to.
We do, but I do think that there is, I will say this, and we have this philosophy on the Water and Sewer Board. There is an onus on the board members. If there is something that you know a person or you know a group that is, letting them know they have that opportunity to speak and encouraging them to come speak out is part of your job as being a member of these boards, is one of our philosophies on that one, and being an advertising agency to support the town. Like my example is about Forest Ridge. I don't live in Forest Ridge. I don't live near it. But you still have that opportunity to tell people they have this opportunity to speak and encourage them to do it, because you have better government when more people participate.
Right.
Regardless of how the venue changes, there is still an opportunity to participate. And that is a just general principle of democratic government, to encourage more people to engage. It can be one meeting, it can be 7, it can be submitting in the pandemic, the emails. We still will have that after the pandemic if people cannot actually attend the meeting. But as a board member for whichever ones you're on, part of it is telling your friends and neighbors if there's decisions coming up that will impact them, reminding them to get engaged.
Sure. All right. Does anyone else have any feelings before we go any further? Chime in. Do we feel like we've covered all the ground? Thumbs, smiles, nods. Good. Okay. Margaret, how would you like to proceed with this? Do you want to do some sort of vote kind of thing?
Yeah, we need a motion to send the text to make that change.
Move to send to, actually, I am not, have, Tom has not notified the Board of Adjustment about this because we didn't have a meeting this month because we didn't have anything coming up. So I will probably not make the motion because I do feel the Board of Adjustment needs to weigh in on this change.
We can make sure that they get a notice out so that they have maybe not a chance to talk about it before there'd be just barely time for them to talk about it before the public hearing. But as individuals, they could certainly come to the public hearing and participate.
Exactly. And I think we will have an April meeting, so we can. But, and again, it is a public hearing too. So somebody else gets to make the motion for once.
I'll move to.
Well, hold on. What is the actual language that we're on 4C? Like, what page?
Well, it's basically to amend the process so that to route special use permits to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay, so there's not a language like we're looking at right now. It's just a written. Okay.
I didn't really want to write it until y'all agree to it.
And then it'll go to the public hearing for
right.
Not
Yeah, it'll be in what you see at the public hearing. You will see the actual language in the public hearing packet, and I'm hoping that the hearing packet will go out early. So.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Hooper, you were in the middle of.
I'll move to send that change on.
Perfect. We got a motion, and we need a second.
Second.
There we go. Thank you, Scott. All right, so we have a motion from Hooper, second from Scott to move this to public hearing.
Toby.
Aye.
Scott Taylor.
Aye.
Jen.
Aye.
Hooper.
Aye.
Jeff Scott.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Chris Johnston.
Aye.
And Chris Austin.
Aye.
Thank you. That is unanimous.
Perfect. So that puts us to 4D, which is on a page that I'm not on right now. Hold on. I'm in there. I'm getting there. Other Chapter 160D amendments.
So there's a lot of the cleanup, and this is where I need Bob to weigh in. I'm assuming that I'm right, but I need Bob to tell us. Since all the language needed to make the ordinance 160D compliant is not available tonight, can the board pass a very generic ordinance or motion that says all the rest of the text amendments needed to make the ordinance compliant get sent to hearing?
They can if they're comfortable with it. Yeah.
So I'm just going to step through some of what it is. So one of the requirements is that conflicts of interest be clearly spelled out in the ordinance, which is basically that you all and staff can't vote on things or process things where we have a financial interest or the applicant is a close association, and it speaks to familiar relationship, business relationship, and things like that. It's spelled out, and we're just cutting and pasting the ordinance out of the state law. Clarifying that everybody takes an oath of office, clarifying the representation that we have to, on a regular basis, check in with the census and see what proportion of the folks in the ETJ there are and how they appear as a proportion of the planning board and board of adjustment. So I am actually proposing a fairly rigid thing that says 60 days after the census numbers come out, that staff will do the math and report back about changes, rather than it just saying that you have to do it. Well, I want to put a deadline on it, because if there's not a deadline, it won't get done.
Right.
Even when I'm not here, if there's not a deadline, it won't get done. And, it speaks to using the best method of determining what the population in the ETJ is, because ETJ is not something that the census calculates people based on. So you have to do your best guess of what the math is. And it's basically to address, the concept that the folks who live in the ETJ are regulated by this board and the Board of Adjustment, and there's no way for them to vote for those folks. And so because the county commissioners appoint those people and they get to vote for the county commissioners, the rule is that that's close enough for that representation. But just calling that out and making sure that the math gets done on a regular basis, because honestly, I don't think we've done it in 30 years. spelling out some more specifics on enforcement, making sure that the note, what the notices are, what the timing is, and so forth. Revocations of a permit now have to be done by the same process that approved them. So if we actually wanted to revoke somebody's special use permit, we would have to put it on a quarterly public hearing, notice it, and go through that whole thing. Obviously, we don't threaten to do that very often, and we've not ever actually done it. But clarifying that however you get the permit is the same process that the government has to go to take it away from you. Clearing up and clarifying some of the language on appeals and some of the administrative steps. So some of that, I think, was in your packet, and I'd sent a whole bunch more to Bob to review. So there's a lot more coming on that. And my goal and hope is that the easiest way to transmit this to you is just to give you a whole brand new ordinance that's strike out and insert. So far, I've been able to do that without any comments in the margins, which for those who are familiar with that just makes the document so much longer. But it does mean that it's like a 300-page document. Now, there's not a change on every page. So some of the things that I could do, basically my goal is by the end of the month to have this to you so that you have more than just the standard week to look through it, because it's not fair to drop all that on you guys. I mean, it's been hard to get it written. It certainly isn't fair to drop it on you guys with 7 days or less to review it. So I really do want to get it to you as far in advance of the hearing as we can. So I'm happy to send the entire thing as a PDF. If anybody would really prefer to have it as a Word document so you could go in and mark it up yourself, just let me know that. And if folks really wanted it shorter, I could exclude, like if there's no changes in one of the sections, whether it be, there's really no changes in many of the development standards, section 6, which is usually where we make all of our amendments. I could just exclude that from the document, or I can just leave it in so that you guys can see everything in case there's a cross-reference. I'm happy to do whatever. When I PDF a 300-page document, it's only 3 or 4 megs, so it's still emailable. And so that is my goal of where we're at. We don't have any development proposals for the April hearing, so it really is just text amendments to try and knock this out to be compliant on July 1. And then, and remember, we can always continue to tweak language at the May meeting before you make your recommendation. And then for July, we can talk about adding the new conditional zoning districts and some of the other cleanup and so forth that we're talking about. So my goal right now is to just get the ordinance compliant, because then when the board adopts it, in theory, in June, that's maybe 2 whole weeks ahead of the deadline. So that's my goal. Because there has been no talk about at the state level to give any further extension, and then rolling out the additional flexibility authorized under that law. We can pick up in July when it's possible we might have some development proposals. I kind of hope not, but we might. You never know. The phones have been ringing off the hook, so that's where I'm at.
Bob, did you have something you wanted to add?
No.
Okay, sorry, I saw the hand motion.
I'm pumping my fist. It's
Oh yeah, okay, gotcha. Margaret, how do you work in the document natively? Is it just in a Word document that you use and then edit and then you convert to a PDF?
Yes. The ordinance actually lives in, all the chapters individually, and I have merged them back together to one so that we can create this strikeout version and have it be as one document. So yes, I work in Word, and then, with track changes on, and then save it as a PDF that then is fixed.
Gotcha. Okay.
But if somebody wants it in the Word document, I have no problem sharing it. I just don't want to assume that everybody has a Word license, so.
Like I will do comments, you can store them all over the place, much easier on a PDF.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else have any preference? PDF, Word, Open Office, a series of JPEGs?
Chris, did I see you wanted Word?
If you don't mind,
No
I'd appreciate
problem.
that.
I think your suggestion, Margaret, about potentially not including the text that won't have any changes would help. I have like 3 or 4 different documents open on my computer right now that I keep jumping back into, like a zoning map and the zoning definitions and the agenda. And I actually have 2 versions of the agenda, depending on what page you're on. And then it just would help to, tighten that up a little bit, so we can just focus on the things that need to have changes. Of course, we can refer back to the original if we wanted to see, oh, wait a second, we just skipped this section. Let me go ahead and take a look at what this is. But that just might help tighten it up a little bit.
So how about if I create 2 files, one that is the ordinance as a whole, as one big thing, but then what I send you in your agenda packet is the impacted pages sections, so that they're both readily available for you and the public to review. So like when you go to that page on the calendar where the agenda and the agenda packet is, there's that 3rd slot that we usually put development plans in. I could put the entire ordinance there as the strike through version. So anybody who wanted to see the whole thing could go there, and then everybody could have both. But what you get in your actual packet would be the condensed version.
Yeah,
Sounds
I
good.
will say getting the cross-reference will be helpful.
Perfect. Okay.
Now, wait, Jen, could you say again what you mean about the cross-reference?
Oh, so you're talking about like having the whole ordinance, because a lot of what will be struck out, added in, et cetera, will then reference something in section 6.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Got it.
Okay. I don't think we need to vote or do anything with that. So as
No,
long as
we do need that blanket motion
yeah,
to send all
right.
the rest of the amendments.
I'm still thinking about Word PDF. So
Answer from Bob if we can do the blanket motion.
Yeah.
Oh, he's saying we can. I move blanket. No, I know it needs to be more articulate than that. Trying to find the specific language Margaret recommended. I move to send all the text amendments necessary to align the UDO with state law to the public hearing. I realize this is very broad, but it allows us the most flexibility. I don't think second line
works, I guess. I think we could have cut off that last little bit.
I was like, I don't think I needed Margaret's second line.
All right, we need a second.
Second,
All right, Toby with second. I think that's like your last second too, right? I mean,
Well, unless she nominates somebody.
okay, that's right. Okay. All right, so we have a motion from Jen, a second from Toby to send a generic boilerplate kind of thing that'll be filled in later.
Chris Austin,
Aye.
Chris Johnston.
Aye.
I don't know who's next in the alphabet. Elise,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Hooper.
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Toby.
aye.
Very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate the flexibility.
Okay, we are on to item 5, election of officers and appointments to other boards. Margaret, you had a specific note in here regarding COVID and how everything's different.
Right. I don't usually make a comment about the 2 auxiliary boards, the Board of Adjustment and the Board of Parks and Rec Board. But given that we have been in COVID the last year and those boards haven't met as robustly as maybe they could have, and that the 2 people who represent the planning board on those boards terms expire on the planning board later this year. Jen, I think in December, and Lisa in the fall.
October.
I didn't know whether the board wanted to just allow those members to serve out their terms on those appointed boards, assuming they're interested. When Lisa called me today, she did say she was interested. She is currently the vice chair on the Parks and Rec board, and they really haven't met. They've had maybe 2 meetings. I'll let Jen speak for herself, and then we can do, we also need to do chair and vice chair, which is currently Chris and Jen.
Yeah, I'm fine doing Board of Adjustment still.
Jen, are you term limited, or are you coming back on next, or
I'm term limited.
term limited? Okay, all right, interesting.
Years for me.
Well, and it brings an interesting situation up. You know, we go through these ebbs and flows of having lots of volunteers and then having no volunteers. So we're back into one of those no volunteers because everybody's tired with COVID. And there's a member on the Board of Adjustment who is very interested in coming on the planning board. And so by holding that sort of an appointment until Jen's term is up, we can actually just kind of do a swap of those members if everybody agrees, and that ends up being a good idea. I haven't really talked to that person very much to see what sort of a fit he would be on this board. But it is certainly, it's something we've done in the past, and helps us stay consistent with our policy of not really having multiple people, having one person serve on multiple boards if we have enough volunteers. We try and limit that, but we do get in periods where we do have people with multiple representations. Jen has done it, Dan Barker did it. So
In regards to when we have people cycling off the board and that sort of thing, and then they're no longer with Board of Adjustment or Parks and Rec or so on and so forth, would we simply nominate someone that month or something to that effect? Okay. Didn't want to leave them with a gap until some arbitrary.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing, I mean, Board of Adjustment right now, we've actually got somebody who rolled off a while, like last year, still sitting on, because we still haven't gotten an ETJ appointment on it. Like Dustin's still hanging out and attending meetings because we can't find a replacement for him.
yeah, ETJ Board of Adjustment seat is about the hardest seat to fill.
I found a guy and I tried, and I didn't.
Okay, does anyone have any objections to keeping Jen Sykes and Lisa Frazier, if they're willing, on beyond this election cycle, even though they haven't campaigned or spent any campaign money? Okay. Not hearing any objections, we will go ahead and move forward as if everyone agreed to that. I guess we'll have to vote on that. We have to.
It would be nice to have a motion and a vote if somebody would like to. We can combine the two to just maintain the appointments.
Perfect. Okay.
I move, it's okay. I move that Jen remains on Board of Adjustment and Lisa remains on Parks and Rec until the end of their term with the planning board.
Okay. We got a movement. We need a second from Chris Austin. All right. So motion from Toby, second from Chris Austin to maintain the status quo.
Okay, Toby,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Hooper,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Elise,
Aye.
Chris Johnston,
Aye.
Chris Austin.
Aye.
And it just occurred to me that my alphabetizing skills are really bad because I've got Jeff and Hooper in the wrong order. If you alphabetize by last name, but I can't spell, so. Would we like to, Chris, do you want to open the floor for vice chair, or do you want to pass it and do chair first?
I don't know which one's most gauche. Let's do vice chair first. Does anyone have a strong feeling about being vice chair? Does anyone want to self-nominate, or does someone want to be nominated? Is that because you're all holding out for chair? Because, you know.
I think
okay.
in theory, because I'm rolling off, I cannot be renominated.
That's true. Yep. Unfortunately, Jen Sykes is.
So
I
somebody
mean,
else would have to.
you could be, and we could defer the issue until December, but if someone was willing, or if you were specifically unwilling, then we could handle it tonight.
Of course, you have a couple of absentees.
Oh, we could nominate them.
There you go. I'm just kidding about that, but I don't know if they're interested at all either.
Yeah, I will say, if you really want to head up all the upcoming habitat hearings, or maybe. Now, if y'all don't mind, I'll do it. Unless somebody really wants it.
All right, do we want to broach that question? Do we want to just hold everything until December?
Sounds like a plan to me.
I've got one that sounds like a plan to me. Do I have any other? I've got a thumbs up, a bright yellow thumbs up. I've got Hooper's thumbs up. All right, we're all tired. Let's defer until someone says I'm being dictatorial. But yeah, let's go ahead and defer until December. If I could get a motion for that, we can all go home to our wives and children or husbands.
Both. Do we want to defer till December for both?
Oh, that's a novel idea.
I mean, does anyone really want to be chair or vice chair is kind of the root of the question.
I'm
Or do we
happy
wanna
to
get
continue
through-
on. I'm also happy to fight someone to the death with the batleths or whatever. Whatever's fine. Okay, why don't we, oh wait, I can't say anything. I want to be quiet now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let me take over here, and I'll accept a motion from the floor to either hold both, well, I'll accept whatever motion somebody wants to make, but what I'm hearing is a suggestion that we defer our elections this year until December, when Jen cycles off the board, and handle both chair and vice chair at that time. Or if somebody wants to make an alternative motion, I'm happy to hear that.
I will motion to,
defer until December.
Okay, Chris is making a motion to defer until December.
I'll second that.
And Hooper seconds. Okay, I have to. So all those in favor, I guess I'm just going down the. I really don't know what I'm doing. It's time to go home. Chris, Austin,
Aye.
Chris Johnston,
Aye.
Elise,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Hooper,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Toby.
Aye.
That's unanimous. We'll pick that up in December.
All right, I've got 6A, Board of Adjustment and Parks and Recreation members. Any updates? Parks and Rec is sick tonight, so adjustment
I was gonna say, we didn't meet this month.
didn't meet this month. Perfect. Staff updates, 6B.
I believe that the UDO speaks for itself, and do my best to get it out to you just as quickly as we can, so that hopefully you're not bored too much reading it in the coming weeks, and that I'll try and make the hearing, stepping through all the amendments, just as entertaining as I possibly can, because that will be a little bit mind blowing to do that. Not cartoons, not animated. Uh-oh, Jen has an idea.
Just doing like how they have the Dance Your PhD suggestions. that whole contest that exists, that was going to be my suggestion.
If you've got the time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so staff updates, UDO work continues. 7, I have Toby Vandermark. 7, Toby Vandermark. It just says Toby Vandermark right here on number 7. For adjournment, Toby.
And so that she can say that she can make her final motion.
I move that we adjourn.
And we don't need a second. That is as is. Thank you, everybody, for staying through it tonight. Toby, thank you so much for all your work on the board.
No
We really
problem.
appreciate you.
Now I gotta go find
Joy.
another board to go and volunteer on. I think the tourism board is looking for somebody.
Hey, there we go.
They are.